What's good, everybody? It's your boy Big Nate. Welcome to Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews. And today we have a very special episode because we are reviewing Cormac McCarthy's Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West. So for this very special occasion, I of course have my doobie. Needless to say, it is ready to be sparked. If you've got yours at home, go ahead and spark that. And without further ado, we are finna get right into it. So while I'm sparking the doobie, I got my cup of coffee here. It is 10:30 p.m. That's a bad decision, I will tell you. But, you know, sometimes you just gotta do it, especially for a book like this. So Blood Meridian was published in 1985. Cormac McCarthy himself is famous for having written several other novels, most famous including The Road, All the Pretty Horses, No Country for Old Men, which itself was turned into an award-winning film. And Cormac McCarthy himself has won, among many, many others, the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize. So Blood Meridian is basically considered to be, and I agree with this to the fullest and utmost, is considered to be Cormac McCarthy's masterpiece, his magnum opus, if you will. So like I said, we have a very special book review video today, and without further ado, let's get into the actual story. So Blood Meridian is loosely, in a nutshell, briefly put, generally speaking, I would say the story about the following, but no, it's basically the story of this character who's known simply throughout the story as just the kid. And he's a young teenager who, long story short, finds himself in the American Southwest, like the US-Mexico borderlands. And he basically, there's no easy way to put this. He basically goes on to join a scalp hunting gang, which is in fact what it sounds like. And this is in the mid 1800s, by the way. And during a time, because this whole book is loosely historically based, like down to like the historical events, down even to like the actual characters in the scalp hunting gang that he joins, like it was like the actual known as like the Glanton gang. So the thing about this time period, and again, there's no easy way to say this, is, and this is again just as like a parentheses within the parentheses. This is one of the reasons I love literature and why I think it's valuable, is because I learned shit historically that I did not know. Matter of fact, let me take a sip of coffee too. Actually, no. This is how I always end up coughing. Let me exhale. Sip. Spilled on myself a little bit. But anyway, it was like an actual thing back in the day where either like official or like semi-official government institutions would literally pay people to slaughter Native Americans. And to the point where so when I say it's a scalp hunting gang, the way it worked, at least in this book, and it's historically based, is that people would just literally slaughter Native Americans, scalp them, and they would get like some amount of gold, like you get 10 gold coins per like Native American scalp you turn in. And that was part, as I understand it, of how the genocide of Native Americans took place. There's a whole aspect of this book that's like a critique on colonialism that I'm not even gonna be able to talk about. But anyway, this is a long summary of saying, like, that's essentially what the book is. It's the kid goes to join this gang, and you basically just follow them in their murderous escapades. Although it ends up becoming more of a story with that, with like the judge and other certain supernatural qualities and certain themes. But like, anyway, that was a long way of just saying roughly what the plot of Blood Meridian is. Now, as you can tell from just the basic plot of the story, actually pause, sorry, you're gonna have to wait. God forbid you wait literally, what is this gonna take, 3 seconds, 5 seconds? Chill the fuck out, bro. And yes, I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee. Take a breather, just relax. Exhale. Sip. But anyway, so as you can tell from just the premise of the book, this book is fucked up. It's extremely violent and brutal. One might say excessively violent and brutal. And when I say excessively violent, I'm talking about, like, for one, just from the very, like, if not the first page, the first couple of pages, down to like the last page of this book, it is essentially just nonstop violence. And not just violence, but like extremely brutal violence. And like, I'm talking, viewer discretion advised. I'm talking like, bro, you got babies getting swung by the heel, getting their brains bashed down on a rock type shit. Like, you have massacres that are literally soaking the earth with blood. And it's like you have people getting hung and skinned and like scalped, and their like genitals are getting cut off, and the entrails are spilling out, and they're getting crucified, and they're getting skinned, boiled up, their brains boiled. Like, bro, it's fucked up throughout the whole thing. Like, there's no shortage of it is probably one of, I would say, if not the most, like, in that kind of way, fucked up book I've ever read. And it reaches such a pitch that it's like death in this book, and I think this is one of the major, I guess you would say, like, themes, is death in this book becomes basically like caricaturized. It becomes almost like literally like a prop in the sense that it's like people will be just chilling with like a necklace of human scalps or like human ears. It's like people have flutes that are made of human bones, and like people are just carrying heads on sticks and on fucking poles and like all types of crazy shit. And it's like death becomes literally part of like the landscape. And whether that be you're walking into a town and there's just at the town square, there's a motherfucker crucified that like shit his pants, whether it's like that, or you walk up and it's like literally the city is strung up with scalps, like actual scalps. Like death becomes part of, like I said, part of the landscape, part of the scenery, part of Blood Meridian as an actual place. It's imbued into the death is literally part of like the fabric of this whole story, which is why I think when people say that this book is excessively violent, it just went right over the head. But when I say that death becomes literally part of the landscape, I mean that literally, because I do drop literally a little bit too much. But I'm gonna, if you can fill in the blanks, it's not a spoiler, but I will say 2 words: babies and bush. So when I say death becomes literally part of the landscape, you understand the type of book we're working with. So, like I said, one of the big critiques that Cormac McCarthy gets in Blood Meridian is that it's, like I said, excessively violent. And I actually do think this book is excessively violent, but like in a good way. So, like some people are saying that Blood Meridian is essentially, Cormac McCarthy is using violence as like a gimmick, basically as a way to keep the reader entertained, because there can be long stretches of the book that kind of just like go on and on. So some people argue and that it serves no purpose. It's literally just violence for violence sake, and it's just like, I don't know, like gore, not because I actually relate this book to like A Little Life, and I was gonna say people say A Little Life is like trauma porn. People might say this is violence porn, but the point is, it's like, okay, so what is all of this violence serving for, right? That is the question of Blood Meridian, because that is the fundamental part of this book. And I think that is the, like, if you could ask me the one takeaway from Blood Meridian, it to me is the idea that human beings are fundamentally, violence is a fundamental part of who we are. War and hatred and evil and violence, all of those things are literally in our blood. And like, I mean, for one, just the entire plot and everything that happens in Blood Meridian goes to show this. But there's some great quotes in here. He says, "When God made man, the devil was at his elbow." And it's the idea that, like, and again, the whole story is trying to tell you this message that it is in many ways inconceivable that humans would not have some aspect of violence and war and evil to them. Like we like to think that kind of shit is stuff we could outgrow, right? As a species, if we could just get together and like, if we could just get our shit together, violence is something that we could move past. We could like evolve past it. But the message of Blood Meridian is no. Violence is going nowhere. And when you think about it, it really, imagine the human race without any violence or evil taking place. Like, it's literally just not equated, like it's not possible. And again, that is the overwhelming message of Blood Meridian. And like the thing about it too is people who say it's excessively violent, like people that say it's excessively violent, first off are forgetting also, like with A Little Life, that life is excessively violent, bro. Like this is based on historical events and like historical actions. And I can tell you right now, the things that happened in the actual genocide of Native Americans during this time, I can guarantee you worse shit happened, far worse, and at a much greater scale than anything that could happen in Blood Meridian. So it's like, to me, when people say like that it's excessively violent, like he should have included, like toned the violence down. To tone the violence down is to inaccurately portray humanity. And that just won't do, in my opinion. It's certainly not the message of Blood Meridian. This would be a completely different book. Like I said, violence is literally the fabric of this story. Tone the violence down makes, he said, tell a different story. Nah. So all of this whole idea too is embodied by one of the main characters of Blood Meridian, which is the judge. And the judge is a deeply interesting and fucked up character, but just right off the bat, this fool is like literally over 7 feet tall. He's like impossibly strong. Like, bro can lift up a meteorite anvil and hurl it like far, like impossibly far. And on top of that, bro does not have a hair on his body. He has no facial hair, no head hair. He has no eyebrows, no eyelashes. Like, he is a hairless being. And on top of that, he is like, for one, he's just like weirdly charismatic and like cheerful almost, which I will just say is a very Luciferian quality because he's also pure evil. But on top of that, he's like knowledgeable literally basically in everything. Like, he has a superhuman, like, there is no way an individual should be able to know this. Like, okay, and when I say, it's like a weird thing to even say, but like throughout this book, his knowledge in, among other things, like botany and chemistry and physics and astronomy, have like actual real big implications for the book. Like, it is his knowledge in those things that saved their asses several times. But it's like, bro, how do you, like, how does he, there's like nothing he does not know. And then that's on that. He's also, in terms of arts, he's like an excellent artist. He can play the violin like beautifully. He's an amazing dancer. There's no language he doesn't know. He's proficient in like the principles of law and philosophy and literature. Like, again, it's not clear whether this guy is human. In fact, I think there's clear evidence that he's not. And it's like, you don't know, it's not clear if he's like the devil exactly either, but I mean, to me, he's the representation in some way, in some like Gnostic kind of way, like the representation of violence and evil and war. And he has a whole philosophy on it. One of the many things he philosophizes is about war. He says, it makes no difference what men think of war. War endures. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting his ultimate practitioner. And because again, the judge first off is pure evil in this book. And it's like, bro, the ultimate trade, war waited for him. Violence is who we are. Because one of the preface quotes of this whole book is an actual, like a thing from an actual scientific article where he talks about there's evidence of a 300,000-year-old skull having been scalped. In like prehistoric times, 300,000, like when man first existed, set foot on the scene, we were already doing heinous shit to each other. We were already scalping each other. You think that just goes away? It doesn't. So it's a Cormac McCarthy. But then also, what I mentioned, because by the way, I did a whole discussion with this with Matt from Matt's Bookshelf, so I'll link that in the description. But one of the things I mentioned is, what does it mean that the Iliad, which is the oldest, like one of the, like arguably the first and most greatest piece of literature in the Western canon, and it's literally just a book about war. That is only the Iliad. People say the Iliad or Cormac Blood Meridian is excessively violent. Bro, the Iliad is excessively violent. That's like actually excessively violent, where it's like, okay, bro, it like page on page on page on also extremely brutal shit. So the people who say this is excessively violent either have not read the Iliad or they're just tripping. The violence, oh my God, I got it. Every time. Just like the Iliad, the violence is the point, my friend. Now, there's a whole other part of Blood Meridian that people don't talk about, which is basically related to the kid, right? These are like the two main characters of the story, the kid and the judge. They're the duality of good and evil, in my opinion, because the kid, in the same way that the judge is the representation of evil or war or whatever you want to call it, the kid is the representation, I think, of like goodness, of human goodness. And now, wait for a second, because if you read the book, you're scratching your head saying ear because I just said the kid was good. The kid is terrible. He's a terrible person. He's done some really heinous things. But in the world of Blood Meridian, the kid at least has some kind of moral conscience, some sense of fairness. And this is seen throughout all his actions, throughout all the books. And it's like, on the one hand too, he's like, at the very least, although he's participating in this, like he at least has some element of guilt for what he's doing, along with other characters like Toadvine. And then at best, the kid is straight up just doing genuinely good things, like genuinely nice, kind, altruistic acts, and particularly even as we go on throughout the book. But the kid, to me, again, like I said, all throughout the book, even though he's terrible, is showing little acts of kindness. And you see that from other people too. It's like they're in prison and someone will like sneak them a little bit of meat under their bowl, or like they're walking past and they'll drop coins, or they'll give supplies even when supplies are really high, because so much of this book is like just survival. But so it's like little things like that, which in the shadow of the violence of Blood Meridian, very easy to miss. But to me, I interpret that, and I think this is the other big message of Blood Meridian, is that even in the world of Blood Meridian, where evil and chaos and brutality rule everything, even in that kind of world, there's some kind of goodness. And if goodness can exist in a place like this, it also goes to show that, like violence, so too is goodness a fundamental part of who we are. There's also no getting rid of goodness and kindness to one another. And it's like, that's a weird thing. I don't think it gets talked about enough, but I think it's the magnitude of the violence and evil that makes the little things such a sharp contrast, like such an important point, I think, in Blood Meridian. And again, I don't really hear that talked about. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention the role of nature in this book, just like literally just because it basically takes place in the desert. And again, by the way, I'm gonna get to this, but even how he describes the scenery, even the role of nature in this book has that same message, because on the one hand, nature is brutal and like you could say, because nature really is like a character, and it's at least like a severely antagonistic and brutal force, where it's like, bro, it's giving, if you're not like starving to death or thirsting to death, you can like get infections from like accidents, bro. There's like worms seething in your wounds, and it's like there's like hail and snow and like all that like fucked up shit, or like you're getting mauled to death by a fucking animal. Like, dude, nature fucks shit up, just like in Lonesome Dove. Get to my discussion with Matt, because there's a whole bunch of parallels with Lonesome Dove that are just uncanny, to the point where I thought one had to be based on the other, but they published in the same year, which is crazy. But so yeah, but so as fucked up as nature is, the descriptions from Cormac McCarthy are just objectively like beautiful as fuck. Like his descriptions of this unforgiving and brutalistic environment are just absolutely stunning. Like I feel like in all the literature I've read, Cormac McCarthy has some of the best descriptions of nature. Again, the most beautiful, most gorgeous that I've ever read. And I feel like, let me know in the comments if you agree, because I think that's another big theme or thing that people talk about with this book, is his ability to do that. So, and there's a whole other part to nature where it's like they're in survival. Like I said, most of this book takes place in nature, and they're in survival mode, and they're literally just trying to survive. They're returned to their animalistic state, and they're often described as like literally bands of apes. And like they'll seriously be eating raw meat, bro. Like eating raw meat, drinking from the same water hole as dude, my joint is all fucked up. But drinking from the same water hole as their animals, like, all that shit. So yeah, nature is a huge part of this book too. Okay, hold up. How to do doobie maintenance. And let me take a sip. I was kind of going off, so let me take a sip. Or two. Okay, let's get to my rating. I'll rate this book, in my head, or in my heart, it's an A+. In my head, it's an A. And if you're anyone else, it's probably lower. But again, one of the reasons this book appeals to me so much is, for one, I just love the writing, and you're either, I think, gonna love it or hate it. But also, this book has tons of parallels with Paradise Lost. And like, again, I mentioned in my review how I love the language, like the cosmic and the scientific language, like the astronomical language, and that's all up in this book. Like, it's called Blood Meridian, bro, and it's like celestial motions and planets and like solstices and all that celestial shit, which I love, in combination with like brutal violence and like philosophy. Yeah, bro, it's fire. But there's also a scene in Paradise Lost which was fucking awesome, which I didn't get to talk about, but it's literally, there's a scene where the devil is, during the war on heaven, is like unearthing the heaven's soil for like nitrous sulfurous material, and he makes fucking gunpowder to just start blasting angels, bro. Boom, 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 for real, just like that. Dude, that book was crazy, I'm telling you. I won't give it away, but that scene is taken straight up out of that book, basically, in Blood Meridian. And there's even the judge's thing. His gun is inscripted with "Even in Paradise I am, et Arcadio et ego," whatever, some fucking Roman shit like that. But yeah, so again, that appeals to me particularly and specifically, but I do have some critiques. So for one, his writing style is very kind of like stream of consciousness-y, which I actually normally hate, and I actually do hate. That's what I don't like about this, where it's like sometimes he'll just go on, sentence goes on and on and on and on, and he's like, and he does this thing. He's like, what's the most cool ancient like crazy, not crazy, but yeah, it's like ancient, archaic, like old, celestial too sometimes. Just what kind of word could he throw in there and just make it sound like sentence crazy things. So like, you know, like that kind of thing. But because yeah, this fucker will go, he knows how to write a run-on fucking sentence for real. But also I feel like the kid could have used a little more development as a character, but that's like nitpicking, so we're just gonna leave it there. But shit. Oh yeah. Last video I posted my Patreon, which features, among other things, the Big Nate Discord reaction videos, my own personal creative writing, bonus podcast episodes, and for some reason it's empty. I'm sitting in the Discord. I said, okay, here we go. I said, okay. I was left alone. I was left empty in that Discord. So I don't know if you're interested. Get to that Patreon. Big Nate's Patreon, home of the best Patreon. My last video was a video from that, so check that out, and then let me know what you thought of Blood Meridian. Of course, that's a given. Or Cormac McCarthy. And thank you for watching Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews.